Well, I think, I'd won a hard-fought election, including against two men who were in the cabinet, and to succeed John Prescott, who'd been deputy leader and deputy prime minister for 10 years. But when I won the deputy leadership, I became deputy leader, but I didn't become deputy prime minister. And I think I just posed the question to myself, and the answer suggests itself. Is it really likely that one of the men, if one of the men had won that deputy leadership election, would they have not been made deputy leader? But more than that, would they have put up with not being made deputy leader? And I do think things have massively moved on since the early days.
But at that moment,
there's still a way to go.
At that moment, you're suggesting very clearly that Gordon Brown, who you worked for loyally for many years, in the Labour Party, was sexist. At that moment in time, took a sexist decision.
Well, I think actually it's better if there is a team of a man and a woman working together. And I think the reason why the Labour Party elected me to be deputy leader is because they wanted to see a woman and a man working in leadership together. And therefore, I do think it was wrong for him to not appoint me as deputy leader. I mean, I had to do all the things like standing in for him in Prime Minister's questions. I had to do all of that. I mean, if I'd have probably been in an ordinary job, I would have been up the tribunal with a sex discrimination case.
Well, you suggest that, except that Gordon Brown appointed the first female Home Secretary, Jackie Smith. He had other women like Yvette Cooper, Baroness Vadera and Sue Nye were two of his closest aides. He did appoint a lot of women to very senior jobs. Are you sure it wasn't just you?
Well, he did not only appointing a lot of women, but he also invested heavily in childcare, which made a difference for women's lives. He doubled maternity pay and leave and is now leading the campaign to help find those 200 girls that are missing in Nigeria. But I did get elected as a woman to be deputy leader, and I was not appointed to the job. And there's only two reasons. Is either it's if one of the men had have got it, had have beaten me in the election, I think they would have been likely to be made deputy leader.
But you are suggesting by that Gordon Brown therefore took a decision on the basis of gender, and that makes it sexist. You suggested you'd have been up the tribunal if you'd been any other profession.
It's one of two reasons. Either I wasn't up to the job, but in which case, how come I managed to actually... I don't feel I should sit here and say I was good enough to be deputy leader. For heaven's sake, I've actually won the election, a hard-fought election to be deputy leader. And also, I did have to stand in for him on occasions like Prime Minister's questions. But I'm making a wider point, which is that although we have come a very long way and masses of progress have been made for women in Parliament, which matters for women outside the House of Commons, we still have a long way to go, and that was one illustration.
You were very happy, though, at the time when Caroline Flint, who was a fellow minister of yours, came out and suggested that Gordon Brown had just used women of window dressing. You were very happy to defend him then and say, I don't accept that Gordon doesn't take women in politics seriously. So you were quite happy to say that when you were in the job, but now you're making this, which is a serious suggestion to say that somebody who was at the top of the Labour Party for years and the Prime Minister was that bothered about your gender that he didn't give you a job?
Well, I think that basically I said that I very much understood the frustration that Caroline Flint was expressing and wanting more progress on women. But actually, the reality is that we do need to be making more progress. And, whilst you can have many good decisions, that one decision, which, you've picked out, understandably, was a decision which shouldn't have been made. And also, when it came to the G20 summit, I found myself at the leaders' wives' dinner, when I was the deputy leader of the party.
But Shriti Vadera, for example, was right at the centre of that. She was on the top table. She basically wrote the negotiations. Now, again, was that really about your gender, or was that about you?
Well, in a way, everybody can make their own judgment about me. I've said what I've had to say. I won the election, but I wasn't made Deputy Prime Minister. But there's, a bigger argument, which is that actually, although for all the progress we've made, there is still a long way to go. And it's not just about the women at the front of house, the women on the benches, the green benches. It's also the special advisors and the press lobby.
But there's one thing about pushing for more progress, and it's another thing to make this kind of allegation, accusation to the former leader
I'm not,
of your party.
I'm not making an accusation. I'm
Well,
stating a
saying
fact.
that he didn't give
no,
you a job because you...
That, if I may say so, is not actually an accusation. It is a fact. The fact is that having won the deputy leadership election, I did not get appointed to be Prime Minister. Now, it's my conjecture, which is not a fact, but my conjecture, that actually, if I'd have been one of the two men in the competition, they would have got the deputy prime ministership, and they would have protested if they hadn't have done, which I didn't. But perhaps I should have done. But, wanting to support the government, I didn't rock the boat.
In the interest of progress, then, which you believe in and have campaigned for so tirelessly for a very long time, has Ed Miliband promised you that you'll be deputy prime minister if he wins the election next year?
Well, that is a bridge that needs to be crossed in the future, and I'm not going to be discussing that right now.
But if you
need to win the election first. But I do expect to be deputy prime minister when, as I hope, that we win the election with a majority next year.
And if that comes to pass, and if you don't become the deputy prime minister next May, will that make Ed Miliband a sexist?
Well, that's too many conjectures. I hope we're going to win the election, and I hope to be Deputy Prime Minister, but I also hope there'll be more women MPs delivering for more equality for women out in the country, which is the most important thing.